Isn't it amazing that through the land today, nobody understands that Yahweh is in the early books. The 1611 King James, Yahweh's name is in the books. But people overlook things. They don't take time to think. See, this is one of the problems in our world today. We need to quit asking, how stupid can people get? There's too many people taking the challenge. In the 1611 King James, we've got the cover page here, to the New Testament, to Isis Christ. 1611 down here, right at the top, in the center, is the Tetragrammaton. Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh. All the old, what you call the Bibles, have these very ornate, with the names of the families, and then the names of the disciples, bordering, and then with your church elders, with your family covenant holder elders of the elect. Next, please. I'd like to thank you all for the time that you're going to spend with me here today as we go into this lecture. This lecture we're going to have today is on Luminaries. I'm Yahweh's name witness. I'm a covenant relationship teacher. Ray Bunzow. Write me a letter at P.O. Box 143 in Roscommon, Michigan 48653 in the United States of America. My email is 4 small character consonants and a number, rbun9@yahoo.com. Visit me at the Labyrinth to Israel on the YouTube. Labyrinth, Labyrintھ. Israel, Ishrael. Now today's Elul, the 25th, that's a Hebrew month. Before Israel, it's still a Hebrew month. 7,519 years since Yahweh promised Adam to redeem the original sin in 5.5 days. Now we have a new moon Sabbath on the 20th of September. The Sabbath doesn't always fall on a weekend, on a Saturday. Next, please. A Sabbath can fall any day of the week, and it's the day in the last crescent of the moon before it goes into the next 7-day cycle. The Sabbath is always at the end of the cycle. I'm going to start out in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 shortly. Now here from the New Century Dictionary, the English Language Volume 2, please, dated 1912. Next, please. We're going to have a description from the dictionary because lunar does not show up, or luminaries either show up in our concordance. We have luminant and luminary, luminate and luminance. An illuminating agent, luminous. Luminary, a light, a lamp, heavenly body, a celestial body. Now keep this definition in mind for luminary, luminance, a celestial body. See, everybody wants to think that a celestial body is just the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the other planets that don't twinkle. But there's more behind that story than what meets the normal thinking. Today we're going to get into a little bit of spiritual understanding of the luminous. And I'm going to step away from the normal earthly New Gospel law and show a little bit of spiritualness from the luminance that our Heavenly Father has placed in these celestial bodies. Up, please. And down here we have lunatic, a part of the luminance. A lunatic affected with intermittent insanity, formerly supposed to be dependent on the changes of the moon. Hence, in general, insane or mad, crazy, also indicating lunacy characteristics of a lunatic. Extremely or senselessly foolish. Next, please. So a lunatic basically is thought of to being affected by the different stages of the moon. Now, as we saw for luminous, the celestial bodies. Here in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Paul explains to us, starting in verse 38, that Yahweh giveth the body as it has pleased Him. So, dirt is my house. My soul and my spirit dwell in this dirt house, this container. But this is the body that most fits all activities in the third dimension, as the Heavenly Father likes us to have our dominance over the fish and the beast and everything. Verse 39. All dirt houses are not the same. It says flesh. Flesh, blood, and bone is my dirt house. They're not all the same. A crime scene investigator can look at a fingerprint and tell you if it's from the red race, the yellow race, the black, the brown race, or the white race, just by the pattern of the shape and design of the fingerprint characteristics that he sees before he gets right down into the details. So all flesh is not the same, but there is one kind of flesh of men, children of Adam, and another kind of flesh of the fish and the beast and of fishes and of the birds. Now here's where it gets a little step deeper into the understanding. In 1 Corinthians 15:40, there are also heavenly bodies. In the book it says celestial. Comes from the heavens. Or are they hung in the heavens? And there are earthly bodies. And the glory of the celestial is one glory, and the glory of the terrestrial is another glory. Or is it that the celestial has dignity, and the earthly has its own glory? Not quite so dignified. Is this what separates the first world nationalities from all the third world nationalities? Not some, not just a few, but if all the races, all the different races are the same, what a contradiction of terms. Different has nothing to do with the same. So from here we're going to go over to the start of creation, Genesis chapter 1 shortly. But there is one glory of the sun, another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars. For one star is different from another star. Now here, symbolically, the sun represents the Holy Father, and his kind of glory that outshines everything. Because we know when the sun's out in the daytime, you can't see the moon, the stars, or the planets as they show forth at night. The moon is symbolic of the families of Israel, the chosen, the elect, the church, those that are set apart. And the stars are the individual family members. Sometimes the stars are referred to as the different races because they shine different. But for today's lecture, we're going to have all the stars are the children of the man called Israel. Because at one point in time, Jacob, as he went through life, and after he left home, he wrestled with the angel of Yahweh all night. And he got a new name. Shall be called no more Jacob. But the books never honored that request of the Heavenly Father. Renamed Israel. Israel and all his children migrated into Western Europe after Assyrian bondage. All 12 families went into Assyrian bondage. There were Judeans, there were Benjaminites, the Levites, and all the other 10 northern families that were considered Israel, the northern 10 families, or Manasseh, better referred to as. They represented the movement that crossed through the Caucasus Mountains and settled Western Europe. As Hosea says, there will be a hedgerow set, and most of the families will settle Europe. Picked up the new name, Caucasians. As we go over to Genesis chapter 1 now, you have to remember that in this world system today, there's two creatures at war. We'll call them the wolf families. You've got the white wolf family, fighting for dignity and honor. And you've got the dark wolf family, fighting for total dominance and suppression and evil. Who wins? Who wins? We'll get back to that question again momentarily. Genesis chapter 1 verse 1. In the beginning, Yahweh created, or Yahweh spoke the heaven, that's singular now, pay attention, the heaven and the earth into existence. Now I have a question. At this point in time in Genesis chapter 1, does the Heavenly Father have a particle mudhouse body? Does he have a body made of dirt? Or is he just in his spirit form? As he started the original creation. Because as you look at this sequence of Genesis chapter 1, you look down into Genesis chapter 2, and the earth was without form and void. This is out of context here. Because at this point in time, this is past the original creation. This is a revisiting to replenish, not to plenish as in the beginning. And as Dr. James Wickstrom has proven, there are at least 6 previous regenesis, reformations, rebeginnings. Genesis chapter 2 should be over, Genesis chapter 1 verse 2 should be in Genesis chapter 2, down around verse 3, 4, 5. But now let's stay back here in Genesis 1. Does the Heavenly Father have a physical body right here in Genesis chapter 1? In the original creation. Or is he still in his spiritual mode, as John saw him in Revelation chapter 4, when he saw he that sat on the throne looked like a jasper and a sardis stone? The two colors, the positive energy, alternating energy. Next question. Was Mary's son here? Is Mary's son here at the day of creation? Because as we go over here to Genesis 1:26, it tells us. And Yahweh said, "Let us make man." Was Mary's son here on this day of the original creation? In order to answer who us are, we have to go back to Ephesians chapter 1. Ephesians chapter 1. This will explain who is in the beginning, who the let us are. Mary's son never shows up until Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Ephesians chapter 1 verse 3. Blessed be Yahweh, who hath blessed us. And here this us goes right back to Isaiah 9 verse 6. Unto us a son is born, and a child is given. Unto us, Yahweh, who hath blessed us in all spiritual blessings in heavenly places. And that takes you back to James, where the Heavenly Father is the Father of lights, bright lights, that knows how to give wonderful gifts to his family and his children. Verse 4. According as he hath chosen us in himself before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before Yahweh in love. Verse 5. Having predestined us into the adoption of children by his word. It says Jesus Christ here, but that's the word that became flesh. John chapter 1 verse 14. By the word to himself according to the good pleasure of Yahweh's will. Now here we go. We're in Ephesians 5, chapter 1 verse 5. We have adoption. We have children. Ephesians 1:5, Ephesians 1:5, and you go over to the side, and they're both the same number. Now how can this be? Do you think maybe that if this were in the Aramaic, the language of Christ, the time of Christ, the Israelites all spoke Aramaic, but Greek was spoken by the mixed multitude? Oh, please. 5206 from 5087. 5206 adoption is a sonship. From 5007, now you have to go through all the different words, because there's a lot of different words, and which one makes sense? The ordained, please. And then from 5207, the other number referenced up there, the ordained family. It's used widely as the kinship, as a child. So if adopted is ordained and children is family, all from the same thought, who was the ordained family? You have to remember, all things are put in place by the Heavenly Father. They line up what He said first. Second, they line up with what the law says, what the prophets say. What the law said, what the prophets say. Because the new covenant is a fulfillment of the law and the prophecy what Yahweh has set down. You cannot cut across the grain and make something. You cannot make wool from cattle. Back to Genesis chapter 1. So here in the beginning was the ordained family of the Heavenly Father that were predestined before time. That is the us. Let us create man in our image. Male and female created he. Male and females. Them. That's the hypocrite. Lower man. Third world nationalities. But then you get down into Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was out in the face of the deep, and the Spirit of Yahweh moved upon the face of the waters. Now you see how they do that to set up the preface of the Trinity? First they have your God over here, and then they have the Spirit. When the Spirit, Yahweh's Spirit, was right there in Genesis chapter 1 as His positive energy was speaking in His language, not ours, all the molecular structure into place. In the original creation. But here, when He returns, as we're going to go over to Jeremiah chapter 4 and see what was there at the time of our Holy Father's visitation. Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 21. And as Yahweh planned His design here, He didn't design megacities, metropolises that housed millions and millions of people. Those were against His plans. Those are set up by the dark wolf that keeps being fed. Jeremiah 4 verse 21. How long shall I see the standard and hear the sound of the trumpet? For my people is foolish. They have not known me. They are sottish children. Stupid. They are sottish children, and that they have no understanding. They are wise to do evil, but do they to do good? They have no knowledge. James tells us the greatest sin for a man to know to do right and to not do right, that is sin. For my children know to do evil. They feed the dark wolf family. Evil. Feed the dark wolf family. Verse 23. I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void in the heavens, and they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and the hills moved lightly. I beheld, and lo, there was no man, and all the birds of the heavens were fled. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness, and all the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of Yahweh, and by His fierce anger. For thus hath Yahweh said, the whole land shall be desolate, yet I will not make a full end. Because the earth will never cease. The dimension will never cease. And here let's go over to Psalms chapter 33. We've got to have a full understanding about who was the Creator. Because there's always this background shadow from the dark side. There was the Son of Mary there. There's the Son of Mary there. They were part of the Trinity. Mary's son is over here in the background. Psalms chapter 33. Verse 6. By the word of Yahweh were the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his nostrils. He gathereth the waters of the sea together as a heap. He layeth up the deep in storehouses. Let all the earth fear Yahweh. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of Yahweh. For he spake it. It was done. He commanded it. And it stood fast. Does that mean it got up off the chair really quick? Or does that mean it stands firm? Verse 10, Psalms 33. Yahweh bringeth the counsel of the heathen to nothing. He maketh the devices of the people of no effect. The counsel of Yahweh standeth forever. The thoughts of his heart to all generations. Blessed is the nation whose leader is Yahweh, and the people whom Yahweh hath chosen for Yahweh's inheritance. Now this takes us right back to Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4 and 5. The ordained family. Which takes us back to Psalms chapter 8. We're going to witness this to the end, but not to the full end. Pick up here in verse 3. I consider the heavens, the works of thy fingers, the moon, the stars which thou hast ordained. What is man that Yahweh art mindful of him? Actually, what is the son of Adam that Yahweh is mindful of them? And the son of Adam that thou visitest him. For thou hast made him a little lower than the angels, and hast crowned him with glory and honor, the holy priesthood. Thou hast made him to have dominion over the works of thy hands, the Heavenly Father's hands, are the ordained family members to do. And that's to hate the evil. And that's put all things under his feet. All the sheep, the oxen, yea, the beasts of the field, the fowl of the air, the fish of the sea, whatsoever passes through the paths of the sea. Yahweh, our King, how excellent is thy name in all the earth. Now, to understand who the son of Adam is, let's go over to Exodus 19 for a quick thought here. And then we're going to go back into Genesis chapter 1. Exodus 19, verse 4. For there's only one family, unless Amos was wrong, that Yahweh has loved of all the families of the world, of all the races, all the nationalities of the world. And this is set in stone, concrete. Exodus 19, verse 4. You have seen what I did unto Egypt, and how I bare you on eagle's wings and brought you out unto myself. Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a particular treasure unto me above all people. For all the earth is mine, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of the man called Israel. Well, we can be sottish. The Heavenly Father does not tell you what to do. Many fine examples and suggestions. The whole 759 laws are suggestions, but it's your choice whether you want to obey or be disobedient. That falls back into the can of we need to stop asking how many people can be stupid, because there's too many taking the challenge. Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. Now we go back to the original day of creation. The Psalms tells us that the Holy Father by himself created all these things. But there were others there. Those were his children that are already in heaven, waiting to visit and have a house of dust to live in for a short period. And it's a short period even if it is 100 years old. What is 100 years in heaven's time? Is that like 9 minutes or something? Anyway, Genesis 1 verse 3. And Yahweh said, let there be light, and there was light. So let me think now. As Yahweh stepped out onto the edge of the third dimension before his creation, he's standing there, must be in the dark, because he's looking to have light. Or was he so bright with the Shekinah glory that he already glowed the whole third dimension in light? But as he knows he can't stay in this dimension for but a short period of time, he has to allow his glow to go when he leaves, so he leaves a reminder of his glow as the sun. He leaves here in verse 4. And Yahweh saw that the light, that it was good, and Yahweh divided the light from the dark. So you have the light wolf for righteousness. And then you have the dark wolf that works in the dark in deceivousnesses. And Yahweh called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Let me think now. Yahweh called the light time to work. Yahweh called the dark time to rest. But see, those of the Antichrist system will work when it's time to rest. Because that's the system that we feed today. Open 24/7, 365 days a year. You can go any place, get anything, anytime, anywhere. You don't have to think ahead anymore. You've been so neutered that if you run out of milk and bread any time of the day, you can go any place and pick up supplies. But that's not how it's supposed to be. When I was a young child, what I envisioned the world to be was different than we've grown into. When I was 25 years old, I could quit the job I had and I would be guaranteed to have another job tomorrow. Good paying job with health insurance and dental. Now today, what's gone wrong? Are we feeding the wrong wolf? And so, then you get down here into Genesis chapter 1 verse 6, and Yahweh said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the water, and he divided the waters from the waters. So in verse 1, he created the heaven and the earth. Does that mean that all of space, from one end of all of the galaxies to the other end of all of the galaxies, is the space on the day of creation? And the earth is all the planets and all the galaxies from the edge of the third dimension all the way around. Because on the second day, he set up a firmament which divided the heaven from the heaven. Outside the firmament was a different heaven from inside the firmament. And then we know the Heavenly Father lives in the third heaven, or the 11th dimension. So, you have to stop and think. You can't just take the faith and the Word and the illegal instructions from these modern Christian, Judeo-Christian churches. They're leading you right in a ditch. They're taking a covenant given to Abram. They're subdividing it. They're breaking that covenant up like a good Jew will do if they want to make real money on a company that's going bad. They'll go buy it up, break it up, and sell the pieces. The only one that can break the covenant that Heavenly Father made with Abram and his children forever, unless the book's wrong, the Heavenly Father is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. As many tomorrows as there will be. Because He has only history. He only has history. He has no present. He has no mystery. We have to examine our Heavenly Father from His history constantly, because we never know what He's doing in the present. Let's go over to Mark chapter 13. Mark chapter 13. This is how the Luminaries works out at the end of days. We've already been in Jacob's trouble. Jacob's troubles started to get set in the rock about 1885. But here in the northern hemisphere, North America continent, what we've got, Jacob's troubles were set in stone December 24th, 1913, when an illegal Congress passed an unconstitutional law giving the Federal Reserve Bank Corporation and Company rights to print and rent at interest the currency, the common denominator for commerce in America. That's when, here in America, Jacob's troubles started. And it was shortly behind that it was in Canada when Jacob's troubles were set in stone. So, we have to look at the signs. We're going to pick this up in Mark chapter 22. Because in the end of times there are going to be false Christs and false prophets and false teachers. There's going to be those that break the covenant. There's going to be those that give the covenant away. They're not going to hold firm to sound doctrine. They shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. Verse 23. But take ye heed, behold, I foretold you all things. If you do your word studies, and you follow the covenant lines, all 7 covenants, you won't be tricked. The chance of your seduction, your beguiling, being seduced, will be smaller. For Emmanuel says here, red letter, I've told you all things in advance. Mark 13, verse 24. But in those days, after that tribulation, see, we've passed from the first tribulation and we're stepping into the second tribulation. The demarcation point was the solar eclipse that just happened here not too long ago. What day was that? August 21st or something? August 21st. We entered a new phase. Since then, look at the hurricanes. Take charge of the earthquakes. The fires have not ceased out in the west. Now they've had some 50,000 plus houses down in southeast Georgia demolished. Where's the lumber going to come from to reproduce them houses? That's 50,000 plus houses, dwellings, businesses. And in Florida, the southernmost half of Florida had quite a lot of damage also. And they've been working on Jose coming in, and they got General Lee right behind them. Hurricane General Lee's at our doorstep. Be interesting to see what he brings. But see, the end's not here. We haven't even started the pestilence. But here's a sign. Within this great North American continent, how could it be that we would have not only what's the word I'm looking for? Obesity and famine in the same nation. We have certain family members that are much too large, and we have certain family members that don't get near enough to eat. Or is it fake news telling us to send money over to the food pantry to feed those children that don't have enough to eat? In those days, verse 24 again, Mark 13, but in those days after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened. The Heavenly Father's concepts, the Heavenly Father's covenants, are they as adamant as they used to be? The sun shall be darkened. The moon shall not give her light. The family of Israel, the covenant people, those that they call religious people, what's happened to them? Are they being shunned? Are those the ones being stoned for righteousness in the courts of America today? And the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in the heaven shall be shaken. The powers that are in heavens are diminished, shaken, diminished, brought to naught. So think about these things. Because as the luminaries, the brightness of the children of the man called Israel, the covenant of our Holy Father Yahweh, as you stone them, as you take them to court and stone them, as you put them in jail, as you do all the advantageous things that you can think to the covenant people, the darkness rises. In our society today, the darkness rises. They've got death, mayhem, starvation, and the video games. Main theme on television, destruction, murder, killing. Blow up all the buildings. And people laugh and they applaud. What are the books written about? What's the news tell you about? Oh, you've got to be fearful of these tornadoes, these hurricanes, these earthquakes. See, when are we going to get the hail? We're just breaking into this new era of tribulation. We don't have the pestilence. We don't have the true famine. We don't have the hail. And a few other things that are going to keep people unaware. And they're going to curse the Heavenly Father. Because they keep calling upon the name of the Sun God. And they don't get any relief. And the Catholic Church has you calling on the war God. The Sun God. And you get no relief. But if it weren't for the few, the elect, the Heavenly Father would allow this whole dimension to collapse. So, if we cannot see the canary in the mine is dying, then maybe we should take all the warning labels off all the products and let the stupid people take care of themselves. One way to take care of the stupid people, take the warning labels off the products. Let them have at it. Oh, by the way, the two creatures. This goes right back to Genesis 3:15. The war between the children of light and the children of darkness. The children of the lady and the children of Sataniel, the adversary, the great dragon. The war from heavens was over. Sataniel was thrown to the earth 75,000 years ago. He already polluted all the third world nationalities. Adam was sent here to clean up house before he got his face all muddy. Well, I just pray that this message was illuminating in certain ways, because we spent the last bit of time talking about the Luminaries. I'm Yahweh's Name Witness, a covenant relationship teacher, Ray Bunzow. Send me a letter at the P.O. Box 143, Roscommon address 48653. Send me an email. Small characters, rbun9yahoo.com. Today is in the Catholicistic year, September 16th, 2017. May Yahweh bless His children, bring them great health and prosperity. And may Yahweh set the standard great, that the evil wool will get caught in its own snare. So be it.